The sign you're on the road to truth is the lack of contradiction. You want to find truth, you just don't simply believe somebody because of their authority or their degree, or you listen to what they say, you test it against reality, and you hold their feet to the fire. We were talking off the air. There were some accusations hurled at you, and I said, well, let's talk about it on the air, given that included with talking about it on the air is included in it is an automatic invite for this individual or individuals, excuse me, to come on the air here for a gentlemanly conversation to work out these issues if they are work-outable, if that's such a word. And so why don't you go into that before we get into the meat and potatoes of the evening?
Sure, and what we'll do is we'll walk a line probably between that issue and the zombie phenomena throughout the night, kind of talking between one or the other, because I think that the individual John Lear in question, with what he's accused me of, has raised a number of questions in tandem with that I would be happy to address as briefly as I can. So basically what happened was that John Lear publicly wrote on a forum that happened to be Godlike Productions, and it was a forum that has since appeared on Project Camelot and Project Avalon. So basically he circulated this around quite a bit. And now he knows me. He knows how my mother died. He knows everything about me because he used to work for the Central Intelligence Agency. He's not going to publicly state something about me without consulting my dossier. So we're talking about an individual who's been sent on a kamikaze raid, a human kamikaze raid against me, because basically they must have known that by his attacking me, that it was autodestructive in terms of argument, that whatever he's brought up, I can certainly answer anything he says. So they would only have sent him on this mission because he's about 70 years old now. And at the time that I really was dealing with his personnel records, and I certainly would never expose anything of threat to national security or anything that wasn't in public domain from them on the air. But at the time that I encountered his personnel records, I was with the Department of Defense, and this was around the year of 1988, and he was 45 years old at that time, the exact same age that I am now. And that's just when he began to propagandize about UFOs. And his father, of course, was the owner of the Lear-Siegler Corporation, which is a very large defense contractor. So we're talking about somebody who is system all the way. And what he wrote just recently was that Dietrich is a Navy disinformation agent. He mixes up Tonopah Test Range with Area 51. His story about the flag on the Missouri at the end of World War II is incorrect, and his story about a Japanese dirigible blimp over Los Angeles in 1942 is impossible. Japan dropped all lighter-than-air research and activities in 1936. They did not have the expertise to build anything that big or even a place to build it. Not to mention, how do you navigate 5,500 miles between Tokyo and Los Angeles without being able to see the sun or stars? That's 110 hours flight time just to get there, then about 180 hours to get back. Headwinds, in parentheses. Then you are going to need a lot of fuel and food. But most of all, during the Battle of L.A. in 1942, we fired 2,000 rounds of 12-pound high explosive shells, which, according to witnesses, just bounced off the target. They would obviously not bounce off of a balloon, so the story is malarkey. And the Nazis going to Antarctica after World War II is old news. Most of them came to the U.S., and after taking over NASA, took over many other large U.S. corporations, and secretly allied with Israel, control the U.S. The Antarctica operation today is huge. The reason for the Holocaust myth, and he says that very pointedly in quotation marks, is to prevent anybody thinking they, Nazi/Jewish people, would ever be allied. Dietrich is just another Navy disinformation guy trying to steer the public knowledge away from the alien craft at Roswell. So this is a mind-bending, shattering public pronouncement and series of accusations to make. I can certainly answer in excruciating detail everything that he's brought up. And basically, he is more than slandering and defaming my character, so I certainly need to point out that fact. To accuse someone of being a disinformation agent in the alternative information media and community is certainly an incredible statement to make, an extraordinary claim, needs extraordinary backing, and he obviously, for some reason, has affiliated me with the United States Navy. And that would be the first interesting statement that he makes, that I'm another Navy disinfo guy. The other one, I'm assuming, the only other one in alternative information media that I can think of, would be George Norrie, because he was a public relations officer for the United States Navy for 9 years. So he must be accusing George Norrie and myself in tandem. But aside from that, we can address that as the show goes on, but we should get into the meat of zombism, unless you want me to address some of these questions first, because I fear if I start addressing some of these questions, it might take up some bit of time. But we've got 3 hours, but we can see what we can.
Well, the reason why I mentioned it about this way is that it can be grouped together, so it could be used in and of itself as a refutation that may be shared, rather than having to dig through the show to get it. Though, of course, people wanting to listen to the show will listen to the show either way.
Right.
So, and one thing I want to bring up just from listening to it, I don't know, he might be just doing this on his own, too, because I've looked into John Lear's work over the years. I used to be kind of excited to hear the stuff, but when I actually followed it up with the towers on the moon and whatnot, and some of the pictures on his website that were supposed to be so obvious to support him, I wasn't too convinced. And the thing that really got me convinced that I don't believe what he says is the jump room to Mars that claimed in '66 that they were able to walk through a portal into Mars. A lot of people believe this, but I've yet to see any evidence for this other than people say, well, I got inside sources, which to me, you might as well be getting it from alien channeling, because if you give me an inside source and nothing else, it's meaningless. You got inside source could lead to evidence that can support what the inside source is saying, and I don't have any proof of that. But he might just be doing it on his own, because his approach would be affected by what you are saying. His own paradigm plus his own marketing.
I don't think so at all, because the reality is that John Lear is part of the old boys network of Lieutenant Colonel, and he may have retired, a full Colonel Kevin Randall, and of course we have Stanton Friedman, and we had Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso. Now these are all men who are government, and hardcore government contracts, military consignments. These are basically commissioned officer class or full-blown commissioned physicists. And in his case, he was with the Central Intelligence Agency. Now, they've operated together for quite some time, and what they've chosen to do since I first begun to try and do what I could to inform the public, initially the Japanese public back in the mid-1990s, and then the American public starting in 2008, moving up to 2010 was about the first year, or 2009 was about the first year that I dared to speak to the American public about the Roswell incident. Now, since the 2009 through until this very moment, I've been totally ignored by all of those individuals I mentioned. They just pretend I do not exist. So, and that would have served them quite effectively. But to suddenly come out in the open and make an accusation like this, it's definitely something that comes from their handlers, because nothing they do is without their handlers. They're still totally commissioned. They're still totally employed. They're still on consignment or on contract, because that's how they make their living. And so in terms of an example for him as to why, you mentioned the evidence and the evidential facts about why you've kind of turned off to a lot of what he says. All he had to do when people asked him about me was to say, I can't speak to that. But no, he chose an attack. And the reality is, when he started this, when he was 45 years old, the same age I am now, he had 4 daughters, lived in Las Vegas, Nevada, with his wife, Marilee, a former actress. He had 2 very young children. Allison was 14 years old, and Jacqueline was 10 at the time. And all of this is in public domain. There's nothing that I'm saying that is in any way, shape, or form private business of his. And all of them are still alive, to my knowledge. Certainly none of them were killed violently on the basis of what he said. Now, he knows that all of my family is dead. He knows every single member of my family is dead, anyone that I care for. He knows my mother died under very mysterious circumstances. He's well aware of this. And he knows she died as a direct result of Roswell and the Rising Sun, the DVD that I produced. I came home to find her on the floor dying, and it took her months to die in the most painful and excruciating manner. And she basically, as the doctor said, when they imaged her, they'd never seen anything like it. Her aorta, the main vein leading to her heart, was, as they said, dissected in 2 places, almost as if it had been a laser scalpel. It was so fine, so well cut. The pressure of the blood going through that main vein was leaking out at very large rates, very rapid rates, into her stomach, into her chest cavity, everywhere else. She was in excruciating agony and pain with that blood pumping out. And that was the night I called for a prayer session. I actually got onto Coast to Coast AM. I asked George Norrie to please call for a prayer for my mother. And it must have helped, because she lasted for a few more months. The pain slowed down. For some reason, just miraculously, the doctor said she should have died immediately. She lasted until March 19th, at the exact same date that Annie Jacobson released her book, Area 51. And so that's the day that she died, again under mysterious circumstances, in the facility that I had installed her in an attempt to rehabilitate her so that we could get her strong enough where I could try and advocate for a stent to be implanted to block up those dissections. And the end result was I was given a forewarning, and now they pay the price because I have nothing left to lose. And I don't care whether I live or die, and I certainly have collateral. And when I do die, then the information I have that I've hidden up to this point will be let loose on the world from a number of different sources, and they will regret the day they were born, a number of individuals involved. So whether they're just trying to bait me at this point with seeing how far I'll go, how far they can go, they certainly have brought up something that it deserves to be answered in the most gentlemanly, debating fashion. Certainly everybody's heard about John Lear. He's this super stud in the airplanes. He's won all these awards. He's held every single license the FAA has ever awarded. He's won races, everything. And he was in Vietnam in 1966, the year that I was born. Now, what I need to ask is, he's such a hotshot pilot. Why did we lose August 1967's air battle? I mean, this war in Vietnam that he was in produced 2 American ace fighter pilots. That means each one of them had more than 5 aerial kills. The North Vietnamese produced 16 combat aces, including Nguyen Van Quoc, the top ace of the war with 9 kills in Vietnam. And on August 23rd of 1967, Koch led several MiG fighters to intercept a group of 40 American aircraft on a bombing mission. They shot down 3 American F-4D fighters and 1 F-105D fighter bomber without losing a single MiG. 8 American aviators were killed or captured. This went on throughout the war. That's how the hotel, the Hanoi Hilton, filled up so fast. Well, what was he doing? He was basically working for the CIA, flying in cargo for General Vang Pao and his CIA-supported troops. And since he's flying for Air America, what was that? It was the largest civilian airlines on the planet Earth. You could put together TWA. You could put together Pan Am. You could put together every single airline in the world that came up to a fraction of the CIA airlines. And who was in charge of Air America, the CIA airlines? Air Force General Secord. And Richard Secord basically was running the largest drug smuggling operation on Earth. So we're talking about a CIA bagman by his own admission. And by his own admission, this man represents certainly a moral platform that is hardly commendable. And when he attacks someone who has lost his family to what I've been pursuing, this is what I have to say to every single one of those men, whether it's Philip Corso, whether it's Stanton Friedman, whether it's Kevin Randall, whether it's John Lear. If you're telling the truth, you're going to be coming home to dead relatives. Now, every single one of them comes home to relatives that are alive and well. And he grew up rich and spoiled, able to play with yachts, able to play with all this plane racing. He had a daddy who built the Learjet, in charge of a defense contracting industry. He can play these little games, and he thinks he can get away with it. Well, I came from dirt poverty. I grew up in absolute filth. I grew up with rats gnawing on my ears when I woke up. And I'm not exaggerating. So I want to let him know that whatever world he lived in, where he goes to Vietnam and flies in drugs and dope and flies it back to America and then plays these little alien games, every single one of his questions I can answer. And I can answer that before a friendly debate, and they should be answered before a friendly debate, because at that time that we get to some discussion as to why he's saying what he's doing, at that point, I really think we'll be talking about any number of other issues that are publicly accessible.
All right, well, let me just stop in here. When I offer this to happen, but here's what I want to say is when I don't know what the word is, referee or chair or moderate, I guess moderate a debate, right. What I will insist upon is that the person answer the question that's given to him. One of my complaints with debates, the reason why I don't have too many things going on here where I have two opposing parties, is that most things I see is simply either non sequiturs or avoiding it and bringing up, oh yeah, well, you did this. Oh yeah, well you did that. Well yeah, well you did this, which does not answer the question. So if and I doubt very much he'll go along with this, but if he does, I would just want to say that up front. I also want to say that, oh gosh. And I forgot what I was going to say.
Just to clarify, don't worry, we'll get back on track with that. Just to clarify, one of the things he accused me of is mixing up Tonopah Army Airfield with Nellis Air Force Base, also known as Area 51. Well, that's just patently absurd because remember that the documents I was dealing with were very old documents.
Right, actually, let me just butt in here just because I'm sure you can remember better than I can. Is that
right?
He's saying you're some kind of disinformation agent for the government. And yet what you're bringing out is very incriminating to the government. So yes. Why would the government employ you to disseminate information which would make them look bad?
Well, beyond that,
I know it's simple, but it's a pretty simple base kind of problem that one would have with his accusations.
Oh, absolutely. That's the big problem. You see, when he talks about aliens at Roswell, it all goes back to World War II. Keep in mind that the American government, what they're willing to kill for is the fact that they lost the war. They lost the war to a species, as they considered it, the Japanese, that they considered to be subhuman. Now, remember that the Department of Justice had been in charge of what they called the enemy alien problem. That was the term that was used. Enemy alien problem. Very similar to the Third Reich's employment of the term Untermenschen, or Untermann, for subhuman. And the enemy alien problem from December to February 19th, when Roosevelt issued Executive Order 9066, was underneath Department of Justice. Then it went to the U.S. Army, which was the father branch of service for the U.S. Army Air Corps, which became the U.S. Army Air Force and ultimately the Air Force. This is where we get into Nellis Air Force Base, Area 51, Tonopah Army Airfield, becoming just Tonopah Airfield. All of it on a map is one gray area. Now, why is it all one gray area on the map along with S4, where Bob Lazar worked and which they claim don't exist? Because it's all interconnected by underground tunnels. Now, aside from all that, it's all interconnected by cross-administration. So there is no mix-up. I dealt with the original documents. The original documents were U.S. Army documents because there was no Air Force and there was no CIA. And in 1947, two branches of service were born, the United States Air Force and the Central Intelligence Agency, as a direct result, both of them, from the collateral damage of the Roswell incident from World War II and the exploitation of Japanese prisoners of war, referred to just as they referred to the Japanese American U.S. citizens that they interned, over 124,000 of them, enemy aliens. And in terms of these prisoners of war and their exploitation, we're talking major war crimes, and the atrocities they committed did not help the Americans win. The end result is they're dying to hide their war crimes. They're dying to hide the fact that they lost. And the end result is they'll come up with any ridiculous thing they can say, but it keeps going back to aliens. They want you to believe in the alien myth. And it's like I said, Battle of Los Angeles, the movie Independence Day. What do they say? In Independence Day, you've got actual pilots, military pilots, flying those planes. They're not computer graphics. And you've got actual Marine Corps pilots flying the helicopters in Battle of Los Angeles. It's not computer graphics. The military is backing these films up with tremendous firepower because these films are saying something the military wants them to say. They want to say there's aliens at Area 51 as opposed to the bodies of Japanese prisoners of war, who the Americans considered to be entirely subhuman. And it goes back to this constant claim that the Japanese did not have the technology to cross the Pacific. It's just preposterous. We could go into that.
Actually, one thing you did say about that was that how could they travel all the way without seeing the sun or the stars? But that I don't understand, because when you go up in the air and above the clouds, that's all you see is sun and stars. So I didn't understand that reference.
Well, he might be claiming that if it's high enough in the stratosphere that there may not be an atmosphere in which the stars will twinkle, or I don't know what his logic is. There's plenty of logic leaps that this individual comes up with, and all of them are preposterous. And we can certainly go into that in detail. The problem is that it actually requires an entire show, which I'm happy.
Maybe that's something we can cover at that point. Right. If we don't hear back from John, and if he does continue publicly saying things, then I would feel no problem with giving you a show to refute that, since he won't deal with it. It doesn't have to be me. I mean, it could be anywhere. I'm just saying that if there's not if someone's going to snipe at do these things despicably, then someone can, in the court of in public opinion, bring out facts and show that this is ridiculous.
Well, he is certainly obligated, since he made the accusation, to bring up naval records. He has to bring up whatever connections I have, that he claims I have, with the Office of Naval Intelligence, whichever department of the Navy that he is affiliating me with, such as George Norrie's former department, the Public Relations Department. So that is an absolutely bizarre attack, and I assume he's taking a snipe at my father, who spent over 30 years in the Navy and over 3 wars in the Navy, when he makes a claim like that. But in terms of trying to read the mind of someone like this, best to answer some of what he says as soon as possible. And we'll see if we have any time left later in the show. What we'll cover is some of the conditions of zombism that are affecting us in America's urban environment at this point. And then when we cover some of the basics of that, we can kind of return to some of these questions, because I believe it is important to answer them now, because unfortunately, once the accusation is brought up, once the friendly invitation to basically a discussion is brought up, almost certainly there's not going to be an answer. And if there's not an answer, then my ability to answer these questions becomes almost a moot point. If it's done a few weeks later, when you don't strike while the iron is hot in answering some of these questions, people forget what was asked, and people forget what the big deal is. And he's not going to say anything again. After what I brought up tonight, if he says anything again, based on the sensitivity of what he's already said, he may incriminate himself to the point of something serious. So his handlers will probably, I'm sure, shut him up. I don't believe his handlers are going to allow him to say any more.
Well, that'll be interesting to see, too, because that also would tell you something. If he won't address it, then maybe somebody said, he struck back a little bit too hard, or he struck back unexpectedly with too much data, etc.
Oh yeah, and I need to hit him in the. I'll slap him in the face with some of our data tonight. But we'll address something that is an.
Before we go, I just happened to check my email, and somebody had a question about the. Mm-hmm. Why didn't the Japanese hydrogen-filled blimps explode when they were hit by artillery fire?
Oh, because they were so large that it doesn't work that way. Where somebody, first off, they weren't hit by artillery fire. These were anti-aircraft rounds. and they were not incendiary rounds. Many of them were unable to even reach the dirigibles. This is where he's making a fallacious statement. See, what's happened is, if you compare the original witness reports of the Battle of Los Angeles, such as the actual police reports, where the police reported Japanese planes shot down on street addresses. For instance, at 185th Street and Vermont Avenue, a Japanese plane was shot down. So these were legitimate attacks that the very next day, it happened on February 24th through the 25th, and the headlines of the morning of the 25th said L.A. area raided and Jap planes attacked.
The news of the world, Wednesday, February 25th. Once again, Columbia's correspondents in world capitals and in the fighting zones in the Western Pacific are ready to give you the latest news direct by shortwave radio.
And now for news of our own West Coast, we take you to Los Angeles and the report of Byron Palmer.
Anti-aircraft guns went into action against unidentified aircraft in the Los Angeles area shortly after 3 a.m. Pacific wartime this morning. The anti-aircraft guns began barking during a blackout ordered by the 4th Interceptor Command at 2:25 a.m. The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach. Army officials declined to comment on the possibility that the object might have been a blimp. However, it required nearly 30 minutes to travel some 25 miles, far slower than an airplane. Watchers on the rooftop of the Columbia Broadcasting Building in the heart of Hollywood could plainly see the flashes of guns and searchlights sweeping the skies in a wide arc along the coastal area. Concussion of the shells could be felt in downtown Los Angeles, 15 miles away. U.S. Army planes quickly took to the dark skies, but whether they contacted the object has not been announced. Army officials say they will not comment until they receive a full report of the action. Although some watchers say they saw airplanes in the air, semi-official sources say they probably were the U.S. Army's pursuit. Several observers say they saw one or more planes spotlighted by 20 or 30 searchlights. The object moved southward, presumably over Huntington Park at the western edge of Los Angeles, and on southward to about Long Beach on the coast. By 3:30 a.m., observers said the object appeared to be over the south of Long Beach. Searchlights closely followed the object down the coast and kept it centered in their glare. Shells frequently could be seen bursting near the object, but none appeared to hit it. The shooting stopped about 3:30 a.m. The shooting brought warfare to the front door of this city of 1.25 million population for the first time since December 7th. Already it was alert to the presence off the Southern California coast of a Japanese submarine which had pumped 25 shells into an oil field north of Santa Barbara Monday evening. Because of the presence of the submarine, a 3-hour alert was ordered at dusk last night, and civilian authorities stood at their posts while the Army and Navy continued their search for the submersible. The evening alert ended at 10:23 p.m., but another was sounded at 2:22 a.m., and the blackout followed within 3 minutes. It covered Los Angeles County from Santa Monica to Pomona. At 2:27, all Southern California radio stations were ordered off the air, except those in San Diego. Approximately 20 minutes after the firing died down, the ship returned and headed westward from Long Beach toward Santa Monica. The guns went into action again, hurling round after round of shells at the object. The second barrage appeared to be closer to downtown Los Angeles, since watchers could hear the concussion of the guns more clearly, and the flash of bursting shells was brighter. Then the ship disappeared for the second time over the ocean. We return you now to CBS in New York.
Santa Monica, Seal Beach, El Segundo, Redondo, Long Beach, Hermosa, Signal Hill. These were parasite fighters. Parasite fighters were released by the dirigible.
Oh, I see.
This is where it becomes so incredibly...
Well, that's right. If they had planes attacking in there, how did they get there? They can't fly across the whole Pacific.
That's correct.
So,
and this is, the Americans developed it first. The Americans developed, this is what's so asinine, and you know that our friend John Lear knows exactly that this is what happened.
Now,
He's
first
well
off, let me
aware
say your anger is not at the questioner. You're talking about John Lear, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to make that sure. So he's listening out there going, "Hey, I just asked a question." Okay, go ahead.
No, understood. And I don't mean it to be taken that way. And I'm sure that on basis of what we discussed so far, I would hope that they don't take it that way.
I just wanted to throw it out there just to be safe. Okay.
Right. Yeah. The asininity lies with John Lear's stance on basis of the fact that as a pilot and as a CIA operative, he knows better. He knows everything that I'm saying. And that's what makes his covering up a war crime and a series of war crimes so heinous and so criminal. There's no other word for it. And the man has no sense of moral fiber to take the stance that he does. None of those men who take that stance do. They truly are evil people. And in terms of what he is saying about, it just bounced off, nobody ever said anything bounced off those dirigibles at the Battle of Los Angeles. Quite the opposite. They couldn't see the rounds hitting the dirigibles. Some that they did see hit, they were able to say that it looked like it hit it, but to no effect. And again, these were not artillery rounds. They couldn't get that high. Most of the rounds missed and actually fell back down to kill people in Los Angeles itself. And planes were shot down, but the dirigibles remained high enough. They missed the vast majority of the shelling. Whenever they did get hit, most of the time, because they had so many balloons within the major balloon shell, the gas shell, the hydrogen balloons that were hit, because they're not hit by incendiary rounds, it doesn't blow. It punctures the balloon. The Japanese can run around inside of the balloons, the crewmen, and they patch it up. And those that were so well riddled they couldn't patch them up, they just dropped them at sea. They had so many balloons within the composite system they could easily make it back across the Pacific. So that should answer the question in its most basic sense.
Yeah.
But I'll be happy to go into excruciating detail at another point. If not this show, then another show.
Right. Well, we do want to.
My old friend, the one who walked before, the one who walk again, the ancient one of old, with wisdom for the new, revive our inner sight, retell your timeless truths. Oh, ancient one. Feet to Fire is a production of IPS Media Works on the OnSync radio network of stations.